Hello everyone, and thank you for joining us today for the ISCRR Learning Series. My name is Professor Sarah Anderson and I am the Director of ISCRR. As we begin, I'd like to acknowledge the traditional owners of the lands we're meeting on. For me, they're the lands of the Boonwurrung and the Wurundjeri people of the Kulin Nation, and I would like to pay my respects to their elders past, present, and future. I'd also like to extend this to any other Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people who are joining us today. Please feel free to make an acknowledgement of the lands you are joining us from today in the chat. For those who are new to our webinars, ISCRR is a unique partnership between Monash University and WorkSafe Victoria. And over the past 15 years, we've had the pleasure with working with world-class researchers in the field of workplace health and safety. Today's a special day, and I'd like to note it's the International Day of People with Disability, which is a day to recognise and celebrate the contributions and achievements of people with disabilities. Over the past 15 years, ISCRR has been committed to positively impacting the lives of Australian workers and injured workers, including those who live with disabilities. So acknowledging this day is important to us and them and the work we do. The theme for today is amplifying the leadership of persons with disabilities for an inclusive and sustainable future. And this theme really resonates deeply with the principle of nothing for us without us, which is fundamental to the disability rights and leadership. For me, as a person with a disability, this theme underscores the critical importance of visibility and representation in leadership roles. You can't be what you can't see, and seeing people with disabilities in positions of leadership and influence is transformative. It's not about having token representation, it's about genuine inclusion that recognises the unique value that disability brings to leadership. Having a disability isn't a limitation in leadership, rather it's an asset that enhances problem-solving skills and provides a unique approach to life's challenges. It's not all roses, but many of the challenges people with disabilities face add to their toolbox of skills they bring. Our lived experience of people with disabilities equips us with invaluable perspective on accessibility, inclusion, and innovation, and these qualities are essential for effective leadership in today's diverse world. When people with disabilities occupy leadership roles, it sends a powerful message to society and to other people with disabilities. It challenges stereotypes, breaks down barriers, and opens up new possibilities to show we are capable of excelling in any field, not because of or in spite of a disability, but because our experiences contribute to a more diverse and inclusive leadership landscape. Moreover, our presence in leadership positions ensures that the needs and perspectives of people with disability and the disability community are considered in decision-making processes, and this leads to more inclusive policies, products and services that benefit everyone, not just those with disabilities. So, today we're actually going to switch gears now, and we're looking at the session which is really around transforming farm safety, insights from the Victorian Fresh Produce Network. And this is going to cover the key findings from our recent evaluation of the Veg Education Victorian Fresh Produce Network, a farm safety initiative funded by WorkSafe Victoria. And a pretty standout panel today, and our panel includes 3 speakers. So the first is Dr. Sarah Oxford, and she's ISCRR's evaluation lead, and she's the person who led the evaluation that we're going to cover today. We have Neil Salvador, and he's the director of Lisha Education Group and the leader of the N58 Group, Lawyers and Advisors team. Neil draws on extensive experience in employment and safety law to help employers achieve best practice in safety and compliance. Having represented both employers and employees appearing before the Fair Work Commission, the Federal Circuit Court of Australia, he's dedicated to building strong partnerships with government agencies, including WorkSafe Victoria, to collaboratively drive positive outcomes for workers, businesses and regulators alike. Jodie O'Brien, our third speaker, is the Communications, People and Culture Manager at Bulmer Farms, a farm who participated in the Victorian Fresh Produce Network. Jodie is responsible for the recruitment, organisation and coordination of more than 50 palm seasonal workers from Kiribati, the Timor and Solomon Islands. Jodie is passionate about educating people to have safety at the forefront of everything they do, and the ethos at Bulmer Farms is that every day of the year is National Farm Safety Day. So before we begin, just a few little pieces of housekeeping. The session will be recorded and will be available to view on ISCRR's channels in the future. So if you do have to pop off or you haven't managed to jump on today, we hope you enjoy this in the future. There's an opportunity to pose questions using the Zoom Q&A function as we go, and there will be a Q&A function at the end. So please feel free to pop questions in when they come to you, and we'll come to all of these at the end. And now I'd like to hand over to Dr. Sarah Oxford to introduce the start of the session. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Sarah, and thanks so much everyone for joining us today. We have a really exciting session ahead. For the next 30 minutes or so, I'm going to introduce the evaluation and speak to the findings. Then I'll ask Neil questions about the evaluation and the project from his perspective. And then I'll ask Jody to tell us what it was like being on a pilot, being a farm that participated in the pilot. Blair, would you mind sharing the slides? So the problem in front of us is quite grand. So despite employing just 2% of working Victorians, farms accounted for 32% of workplace fatalities in the past decade, with 79% involving vehicles. So this was from WorkSafe Victoria's agriculture strategy from 2020 to 2023. WorkSafe identified that horticultural farms, which we'll be speaking about today, are hard to reach workplaces where unnecessary accidents and deaths occur. And to address this challenge, they created what's called the Safety Learning Network. For the Safety Learning Network, WorkSafe funded veg education to trial a pilot intervention, which is the Fresh Produce Network. And the goal was to improve farm safety in 3 ways. 1, creating a collaborative network of growers to identify enablers and barriers. 2, developing targeted initiatives to address identified barriers. And 3, leading safety culture change by shifting mindsets and behaviors towards more effective risk management. So for the evaluation, we worked with Veg Ed early on. We created a program logic to identify, blue sky thinking, what are they working towards? What are the steps that could be taken to reach these outcomes? And then we decided to do a process evaluation and an outcome evaluation. So the process component included asking, what was working well when Neil and his team went in and conducted the pilot, what could be improved? In terms of outcomes, what behavior changes could we see? Now, the pilot started about 2 years ago, but Neil worked with the farms in a staggered approach. So to see behavior change this early on would be quite astounding. So the aim that I'm going to speak to today in terms of the findings is to understand the extent to which the VFPN influenced the culture and attitude of farm owners, managers, and workers to improve farm safety. Now, we took a mixed methods approach to this evaluation. We interviewed farm owners and managers from 10 of the 11 participating farms. And I also did chats early on to check in with these participants to make sure that I could build rapport with them as the evaluator and explain the process of the evaluation so it didn't come as some surprise at the end. We also conducted baseline surveys with seasonal workers and owners and managers. Now, we intended to do pre-post surveys to see what the difference was before and after the intervention, but we quickly learned that with seasonal workers, this wasn't possible with the timeline that we had. We also conducted member checking. So this is a pretty specific context that we're working in. So after we had the findings and analyzed them, we went back to 2 participating farms and to Veg Ed and asked them questions and said, this is what we found. Does this resonate with you? Are we missing any nuance here? And then the 4th method we took was a partnership analysis to help Veg Ed understand, what were the strengths with their partnerships? What could they do to maybe improve partnerships with the pilot? So I'm going to talk to 3 main findings today. The first is around management. So with those 10 interviews, we definitely saw increased awareness and accountability across occupational health and safety. So we saw a shift towards psychological safety, a shift in attitudes towards integrating safety into company culture, and heightened awareness of the importance of farm safety. So if you look at the quote from participant 9, they said, I think this project helps people and businesses understand their risks and how those risks manifest across the business. There's a much better understanding now of what the risks are and how we should address them. And then another farm, participant 3 said, I think from my point of view, because I'm the manager of the business, that's huge. These things need to start at the top. If the top's not involved or interested and doesn't think it's important, you're probably fighting a losing battle. But for me, it's clear that we need to improve on what we have. Now, I found the conversation I had with participant 3 around this quote really interesting because they said they were from a premier farm and they went in saying, we had a lot of respect for Veg Ed and Felicia Farms, and that's why we participated. We actually didn't think we would find much wrong with what we're doing. So the leader said, I didn't put much investment, much energy into this process at the beginning, and I really regret that because this is actually my problem to solve. So to hear someone say that they want to change their behavior around this, I found very profound. Next slide, please. So in terms of the workers, again, we wanted to do a pre-post survey. We were unable, a post survey, we were unable to do that. The farms were staggered throughout the pilot. So some farms, they started their safe system a year ago, where others just finished, maybe 6 months ago. So we weren't able to gather insights about workers from all farms. So we had mixed initial responses because of this, with some farms seeing immediate behavior changes. So the managers and owners spoke about better engagement when staff were involved in creating safety materials and materials that were specific to the farm. So participant 1 on the right said they loved having their photos taken. They really liked being involved. I think that's key. They do want to be involved. For the ones that come back year on year, to be seeing yourself in these things, I just think it makes it more engaging for them, much more real. And this is talking about induction videos and safety signage, which Neil and Jody, I'm sure, will talk about. One farm spoke specifically about increased adherence to safety protocols. They said, now I see our workers working properly, getting on and off the machinery. They also have QR codes. If they have questions, they can, see a video about how to properly use the machine. And then we had another farm owner or manager talking about workers arriving better prepared through induction videos. So participant 7 said, I think showing them our machinery at work prior to them starting work has seen the transition happen a lot smoother, that they've come to work already knowing what they're going to do and how to do it. So something we talked about in the early days of the program logic was reaching the broader community. We thought maybe it was unlikely that we could, or the veg ed could, sorry, I'm the evaluator, but reach the broader community. However, there was actually findings around this. So farms spoke about peer-to-peer resource sharing. So the farms that participated in the pilots, some may have had an induction video around traffic, whereas others worked on another safe system. And they said, we're actually sharing resources among each other, which is quite remarkable. And then we also saw farms outside of the pilot following suit. So they may have come to a presentation that Veg Ed did. They may have linked up with a farm in the pilot, and they were learning from not working directly in the pilot, but learning from these connected presentations and networking to actually implement some of the changes on their own farm. And often they would connect with Neil to get advice. In terms of unintended benefits, we saw some examples of additional safety risks addressed. And when Neil and his team would go in and do a risk assessment, obviously they were looking to integrate a safe system into the current system on the farm. There are some immediate hazards that were red flags that the team addressed, including missing guardrails added to machinery, packing processes changed to reduce forklift hazards, improved PPE was implemented, and there are unanticipated safety improvements for an unguarded saw. And finally, a few farms talked about compliance and audit success. Because they participated in the pilot, they felt that was what helped them pass significant audits with national grocery chains and meet compliance standards. And they said if they had not participated in the pilot, they didn't think that they would have passed. So some really strong findings that have come out from this pilot project. I now want to ask Neil a few questions about his experience with the project, starting off with what were some common challenges farmers face that result in unsafe workplaces?
Well, hello, everyone, and thank you, Sarah, for the question. I guess if I just provide some context about the farms that we went to and the locations around Victoria. So we went to farms as far as Mildura and then also to Bulmer Farms in Lindenau and Gippsland. So that's about 815 kilometres in terms of distance. And I'm sure that people will appreciate the complexities and the issues that farms experience in Mildura in the Sunraysia region are very different to those that are experienced in the Gippsland region. But there were some common threads that we constantly faced. And one of those was there is economic pressure that many farms are having to deal with. And that was made very clear to us right from the outset. So we knew that that was going to be an issue, and that was easy to overcome because the project has been so well supported and funded through WorkSafe. So the fact that we were able to assist farms with undertaking safety initiatives to overcome that hurdle in itself was a really wonderful start. So that made life a bit easier. The other common issue that we experienced across many farms was the overwhelming appetite from farm owners to want to improve safety, but just uncertain about where to begin, what to do, and how to initiate anything at all. And whilst there's an acceptance of the broad range of materials that are available to assist them, they felt as though the materials didn't quite address the contextualized need to improve safety on their farm. So as a result of, we think, those three factors, many farms really didn't move forward with safety as they probably should have. Having said that, they were certainly well aware of their legal obligations and what they needed to do. But those three factors were really the driving force behind getting started through this process. So we were able to pick that up quite quickly, and by addressing those hurdles, we felt as though it provided some traction towards getting to where we needed to get to. The other factor that was really interesting through our process was, and Sarah's already mentioned this, that there were surveys that were undertaken, and those surveys were with farm owners and also surveys with the workers. And there was some interesting data that came out of that, which also led to us really making sure that we address those particular matters. And the survey results highlighted that the workers felt as though the environment that they were operating in was really safe. And when we dissected where those workers were from, they were largely from Pacific Islands or the subcontinent. So that's their background and that's their exposure to safety. But then when those questions were asked of the owners absolutely felt a need to improve safety. So we have this disconnect between the owners and the workers. So for us, it was about how we bridge that gap. And then one of the other hurdles that we had to overcome was the fact that we were dealing with people, particularly the workers, where English was their second language. So there were many, many instances, and there's one farm particularly that stands out where there was not one worker in their business that spoke English. And this is a third generation farming business. There was about 25 workers and not one could speak English. So with the owner absolutely wanting to improve safety, we had to deal with that particular issue, and I guess we'll talk more about how we dealt with that. But these are some of the obstacles and some of the hurdles that we had to come across. And I can't believe it's 2 years that this project has gone on for, because for us it has gone really, really quickly. We've had to face and endure a number of environmental factors are in fact another hurdle that we had to overcome was not only the distance for us to get to these farms, but environmental factors. As an example, 1 week we had planned to go and see Jody at Bulmer Farms, and there was bushfires, so we couldn't get there. The week later, where we had organised to go down there, there were floods. So it was a number of these factors that we had to deal with along the way. And again, working with WorkSafe, who was so patient and supportive and really understanding through this process, has really provided what we think is the basis for success. Having that support behind us has been wonderful. That's a long-winded answer, Sarah.
No, it's a great answer. You hit on competing priorities, weather, diverse workforce, a lot of the key things that came up over and over again. What was the veg education approach to address these challenges? Can you walk us through what you did?
Well, again, it was really about patience and building rapport. So when we first set out on this project, I think we had planned to undertake 3 or 4 visits per farm and to get the initiative in place. And we found that had to be doubled. And we never felt like that was a burden by any means at all. It was, in fact, so enjoyable to be part of the process. And we started by having meetings on the bonnet of my ute, where we would plan things out. Towards the end of the project, we were having lunches and scones and cakes in people's homes. So it was the rapport and relationship that had been developed had really allowed us to speak openly and honestly, and as did the farm owners. So that really did provide us with a great deal of benefit. And so by having that relationship allowed us to get into areas that we probably, I guess, in terms of the safety initiative, that we didn't have to get into. But again, we spoke about those unintended benefits, and by having that sound relationship, you built up such a great rapport with these individuals that you just wanted to do more to help them. So it was really about developing relationships, and relationships not just with the farm owners, but also with the workers, because we had seen them now over and over again. So relationships were so important to this entire process.
And what did the risk assessment process look like? So
It was a matter of consultation. So it was strong consultation with not just the farm owners, but also the workers. And there were many aspects of their business, farm owners' business, that they didn't realize were unsafe systems or processes or tasks until that collaboration took place between both parties. So I guess for us, it has never been about just the implementation of a safety system. For us, it has been far more than that. It is about engaging with all parties through this process and leaving the safety initiative with learning and an understanding about how to go about to try and achieve a similar outcome. So that for us has really what it's been all about.
Thanks, Neil. When I was speaking with the farm owners and managers, a lot of them said when working with you that you implemented a system that worked within their current system. So it surprised them how easy it was in some ways to implement it, that you just brought in a new lens and looked at their systems, how helpful that was. Can you speak about, we have a slide in front of us, some of the safe system interventions that you implemented and trialed?
Yeah, for sure. Look at it again. It came to light very quickly that one of the frustrations about implementing a safety system is that a one size does not fit all. And so it had to be contextualized, and it had to be relevant, and it had to be appropriate for each farm. And that's why we underestimated how much time that would take through the process. And to get to that point, you have to have relationships and you have to have open communication. And through that, we were able to achieve, we think, probably more significant unintended benefits than the actual safety initiative. And as an example of that, we were certainly, well, from a legal side, I was certainly aware of the statistics and the data around where injuries take place. We know that about 75% of injuries take place where there is conflict between mobile plant and pedestrians. So to break that down and to break those risks down into something that is relevant, practical, and pragmatic was a priority. So as an example, some of the things that we implemented was in one of the farms, they have an air dryer, and we found that there was a significant issue with that air dryer process. There was a large accumulation of dust through that. We were very aware of the issues around static electricity and dust and fire and so on and so on. So we spoke about that, and they were not aware of the risks associated with that. So we helped and assisted putting those systems in place, which led to a significant redesign of their entire business in many ways. So that was an unintended benefit. Noise and the reduction of noise, we know it's often underestimated how significant noise management actually is. So that was an issue in one of the farms locally at Werribee South that we assisted them with. And now they have those systems in place where those that are engaging in any tasks are dealing with those tasks with all the controls that have been put in place. Planting and equipment, and again, these are simple things, but the necessity to have seat belts, around planters. It's often overlooked, but a very important part of the process, not just legally, the regulations state that that needs to occur, but also from a practical perspective. So that was quite big. One of the big areas that got a lot of attention and really stood out to us was traffic management. So there's a lot of interaction in packing sheds, in unloading areas where there are trucks, tractors, forklifts, and people operating all within sometimes a really small vicinity. So about having exclusion zones and making sure people understand acceptable behaviours and non-acceptable behaviours was really important. But the other important part was just some basic things about injury management. What do you do if someone is injured, and how do you deal with the emergencies that may arise in various different farms? Signage was big. Signage was really big, and we felt that by having appropriate signage where people from different languages could understand was really important through this process. Really simple, but very, very effective. So they're just some of the safety. There's so many that come to mind, Sarah, but I know we've pushed for time.
That's all right. Thank you, Neil. I really appreciate it. Jody, we'll move on to you and hear about Bulmer Farms. So can you tell us about Bulmer Farms? Give everyone here. And you're on mute.
Rookie error there. So we are a multi-generational family owned and operated business in the Lindenau Valley, which is about 3 hours southeast of Melbourne. So our challenges sometimes from a recruitment perspective with safety professionals is quite a challenge, in that people don't necessarily always want to move to a regional area. So to have a safety specific person on site has always been a juggle for us. We're in the process of recruiting now, so fingers crossed. So we grow mixed salad, we grow baby spinach and brassica vegetables for both domestic and international markets, and all of the domestic processors here in Australia. So we farm about 1,700 acres of both owned and leased land. Our workforce at the moment is 116. By the end of the year, it'll be at 120. And then probably by the middle of January, we'll be at about 124, 125. 50% of that workforce at any one time is our palm workers. So we have workers from Kiribati, Timor-Leste and Solomons from the palm scheme. And then we've also got a number of other cultures and languages and nationalities within the business. So there's Malaysians, Vietnamese, Thai, Chinese. I think we've got a couple of Indonesians that I'm going to onboard next week. So they form a lot of our casualised workforce. So we have a lot of diversity, but with that diversity obviously comes the challenge of English proficiency and the countries that they've come from. Even if they have been in Australia for a little while, their, I guess, ingrained DNA of what's safe and what isn't is very different to what our standards are.
Can you speak to some of the other safety challenges you face on your farm?
I think over the last couple of years, our as a business, we take safety very seriously. Without it, we don't have business, and everyone, we have an ethos that's grown from this project that we say safe, healthy, happy. When you're safe, you're healthy. When you're healthy, you're happy. When you're happy, you're safe. So it's this beautiful continuous circle of communications now. Our challenges, I think, are sometimes twofold, in that we've got an established Australian workforce that have always done things a particular way. So for them, change can sometimes be not confronting, but it's that adage of, hey, we've always done it this way. Why do we need to change? And then you've got on the flip side of that, the challenge of English being a second language. So it's that comprehension and that true understanding of the why and the how and the when and the where.
Sure. And what safety intervention did you implement?
So we kickstarted our beautiful safety journey with the veg education team with those awesome induction videos. Now, that was a whole day exercise that we inducted our entire palm workforce. I think we delivered it was a whole day, wasn't it, Neil? It was a long day, but it was an awesome day in that it really kicked off a new level and a deeper understanding of the importance of safety for our international workforce. So it really, I think, started to whet their appetite for knowing more about safety, but also wanting to engage more with us about safety and having some confidence about how to articulate a problem, or if they saw a hazard, or if they saw something that they wanted to say, hey, is that safe or not? Those induction videos, because they were so beautifully structured to connect with people that English is not necessarily their first language, it really gave them a confidence of how they could communicate.
Yeah.
So our safety intervention was an awesome external lens with Neil and the team to come and look at our very busy pack shed. Now, we harvest every day of the year, but from October to April, we go into what I call like DEFCON 5 stage, in that the pace is quicker because things grow quicker. We've got more people on the floor. People eat more salad in summer. So, we are naturally much busier. So we looked at this very busy pack shed environment where we've got multiple forklifts and pedestrians going in different directions. Yep, there's our beautiful pack shed. And we looked at ways to find better pathways for pedestrians, i.e. our workers, coming out of the left-hand side of the shed, which is all of the processing side, and the right-hand side is where product is either staged for pickup, and that was a big cool room area on the right-hand side, and then the back of that was storage. More about why I'm saying the back of that was in a minute. But to try and limit the amount of movement that was happening in that actual breezeway covered in area. So we created the new pathway that you can see in that image on the left. And that allowed us to, move a workforce that is coming and going for either smoko or lunch, or to go to the toilet or whatever, to being in an area that was safe and out of immediate harm of forklifts. So the rear door at the back there, you can see on the right, that is completely separate to any forklifts or any vehicles that they would come in the path of. So it's really created a very smooth and safe way for them to get to and from their shift station each time they come and go from work.
Great. So you've talked about the induction videos and the traffic management. How did this impact culture, attitudes, and behavior at Bulmer Farms?
It really changed people's confidence, I think. And it also shifted some of the more established attitudes within the established Aussie team members, in that it opened their eyes to going, oh, hey, that actually is better, because then I'm not worried about people walking in the middle of the pack shed, even though there was a designated and still is a designated pedestrian area there. When things get really busy, there's a lot of forklift movement happening. So the least amount of people you can have in there, the better. So the whole intervention and the project was a really great exercise for people to understand the importance, both for their personal safety and that of the whole workforce and the business, that we all work together to achieve these really positive and really important outcomes.
That's fantastic. Blair, yeah. And can you go?
So probably a thing to note, Sarah, what we did, if you can see the signage that we've got on the wall with the crosses and the arrows, what we were able to create for our own internal training was a forklift safety video that really explained forklift movements and pedestrian behaviours around forklifts. So the signage and the messaging that we used in that video is consistent with the signage and the messaging that you now see across the pack shed floor. The important thing with this as well, it was another layer of engagement and almost like bringing people into trust and bringing them in to let them show off their confidence. So a number of our forklift drivers are from the Palm Scheme. So we engaged with them to get them to tell us whether the messaging was right. Did they understand it? Did they think that other people in the team would understand it? And we were able to refine different frames of the forklift video to make sure that we were truly creating a bespoke product that was delivering the message that we needed to our workforce, both Aussie and and international. We roll that video out. We've got a team app communications platform that we use to deliver messaging to our 120 strong workforce. Sometimes it can be hard to get to all of them in one go, but team app does it well for us. But we often like repeat a launch of that forklift video just to go, hey everyone, here's a nice little reminder about how we need to behave and move around the pack shed busy environment. And it's been particularly valuable in as we're starting to see activity and traffic movements increase because we're just getting busier and busier. Rolling that out as a really easy to understand resource that people just go, oh yeah, I remember. We have to do that. So it's been a great exercise. And there's my beautiful little team with their safe, healthy, happy messages. So I think it's really amplified people's understanding of why safety is so important, but it's given them these really solid examples of the why, where, when, and how in a way that they understand and in a way that we can continue to repeat. And we cross-check ourselves too with that forklift video. We'll often run people through, you know, just the video I think is about 3.5, 4 minutes long. But at the end of it, we get them to fill out a competency questionnaire just to make sure that they've actually understood. So that gives us a lot of peace of mind that the messaging is still relevant, it's still connecting, and it's having an impact for safety in the everyday operations of the business.
Fantastic. So what's next? How will you build on what you've started with this pilot?
Well, we had this lovely environment that we'd created and everybody was playing with the rules and everybody was doing a great job. And then we had, through no fault of ours, a pack shed fire that has changed what I call our, you know, nothing's ever perfect, but this was as close to utopia as we could get. So the changes in the pack shed operations because of that fire, and we're in the process of now rebuilding and reconfiguring the pack shed. This has created a solid foundation of awareness that I think we will continue to build on, and there'll be continued collaboration as we rebuild, and everything's still very operational. It's just been painful because we've had to condense some things into specific spots because there's parts of the pack shed that are not operational until we get them fixed. So I think this solid foundation of awareness, both for our local and our international workforce, has really allowed us a level of confident engagement that as we then have to change processes and procedures again, when we have everything back to our close to perfect as possible environment, we'll continue to engage with them and get them to help us with the messaging of how to structure important visual and toolbox resources so that the message is really connecting with everyone on the floor, that keeps them safe, healthy, and happy.
Fantastic. Thank you, Jody, for sharing the experience of Bulmer Farms. I'm now going to open it up to Q&A. So if Neil, you'll take your microphone, you'll unmute yourself as well. We have a few questions that came in before today, but also if you have questions, please post them in the Q&A in Zoom. One person has asked thoughts on OHS challenges in relation to climate change.
Well, I think what we have certainly seen right from places like Mildura through to Gippsland suggests that those changes are different, and the impact that climate has at different farms at different locations requires a different response. As an example, we did have some conversations with those farms in Sunraysia, specifically around emergency management. So if a fire or something was to take place, how do you deal with those specific situations, especially when you have individuals that are working alone some distance away from others? So there's certainly challenges. Farmers are certainly aware of the impact that climate plays, but I think to answer that question requires a different response depending on what region those farmers operate in.
Sure. Jody, I have a question for you, but Neil, you might want to add to this as well. Amazing story. How did you involve your team in the design of safety materials, video, and signage? How important in this phase was it to the success of your workplace, of safety in your workplace?
So what we did with the forklift video, with our incredible communications and video editing skills in Canva, what we created, we sort of decided what were very obvious and universal. So, you know, applicable to someone from Timor, applicable to someone from Kiribati. What would be those visuals that we could use on the pack shed floor that we could then incorporate both in a stagnant signage, but also in the video? We then got a core group of the workers together and we said, okay, if you saw this sign, what would you think it meant? And pretty much 100% of them said that would mean that you can't do this or you can do this. So we're like, right, we're on the right path there. And then we would sort of re-engage with them. It was usually when we were building the video, it probably took us about 3 weeks to get to the final product because you're juggling with getting access to people around their shifts and, you know, at a time where they're not tired and don't want to just get in the car and go home. But they became so engaged with being part of it because we built the initial video and then we got them all together as a group and said, what doesn't make sense to you here? What does make sense? And they were like, oh, I would include this. And I think you need to explain in their own language. And I think because we have such wonderful relationships with them, we can speak in that broken English to understand what they mean. And then we'd go, okay, so you want us to include this, you want us to add this. Let's get back together in a couple of days. We'll implement those changes and we'll see whether or not that makes better sense to you. So they actually felt really empowered and, you know, for want of a better word, super important that they were part of the process and they saw their feedback being implemented. So then they'd come back and they'd go, oh, wow, you listened to me. And I can see now what you've implemented. What more do you want me to tell you? So it was just this beautiful building of trust, but also building of their own confidence of what they experience on the floor, what they know as a pedestrian or as a forklift driver. So we got the perspectives from both angles. So from someone behind the forklift trying to navigate, you know, a busy, challenging environment, and someone as a pedestrian that, you know, you're talking a scale of, they can vary from sometimes being some days really alert to by the end of the week, sometimes being a bit tired. So we sort of said, you know, if you're really tired, is this still going to make sense to you? Will you still know this safe, healthy, happy message about how you behave around forklifts? And they were like, yes, we will. So it was a great exercise, I think, in that, you know, cross-cultural, multi-language, and us really getting inside their heads about how this would be best delivered for them. Because it's going to make sense to the Aussie workforce anyway. It's more that 50% of the workforce, and really in our pack shed, they're about 90% of the workforce really. So knowing that we've got the messaging right by a consultative process was just was a great experience for everyone, and we all learnt from it. And we often get, you know, the people that were involved in that exercise, they often say, when are we doing the next video? We want to do the next one. So, you know, we love that level of engagement with them, and they love that trust and belief in what they're seeing and experiencing on the operational day-to-day of the business.
Fantastic. Neil, did you want to add anything before I go to the next
Yeah,
question?
look, a couple of points. Jody's absolutely spot on, because that was synonymous with a couple of farms, and Jody and her team did a wonderful job creating those videos too. What we found also was that by having the workers involved in the videos, they felt like they were movie stars. So what they wanted to do is to pass on those videos to their families overseas. And we found out that those videos were in fact sent to communities amongst their core group of people, many of which wanted to return or to arrive to Australia to be part of the program anyway. So indirectly, what we were doing is actually exposing people from other countries around some of the safety requirements and standards without even realizing that. So that was really good. The the other part that stood out to us was some of the smaller farms we worked with, and we deliberately ensured that we worked with larger farms and then really small ones. What we found with those smaller farms was the technology was not available to them. So we had to make sure that we had documents that were all about the appropriate images and signage that stood out to those people. And those key messages, safety messages, were able to resonate with those people. So yeah, it was a broad mix.
Fantastic. 2 more questions, and then we're going to have to close out. One, building on this one, do you believe that the consultative process is added to your workplace culture generally, and possibly building the foundations for a returning workforce?
Absolutely. And look, our strategy over the last 2 years is that we want to continue to build a returnee workforce. So pretty much, I'm just glancing over it. Neil knows my amazing whiteboard with all my moving parts of name tags.
Impressive.
Yes. So I would say 98% of our seasonal workforce, both the long-term visa holders and the short-term visa holders that are only here for 9 months, is now returnees. They're either here for their 2nd, 3rd, sometimes 4th season. So for us, that is an incredible peace of mind from both a engagement, experience, and lack of risk. They come back, and you got to get them off island time on the first week when they come back, because they've been at home for 12 weeks and basically done very little. But as soon as they're back in the groove of things, they're back probably in the same room that they live in. They're doing the same job that they did last time. So culturally, we're building, they call themselves mixed salad, because they're a little bit of Kiribati, a little bit of Timor, a little bit of Solomon Islands, and you mix it all together and it's a big box of cultural mixed salad. But the benefit for the business there is that we're really building a team that is passionate about being here and being safe, healthy, and happy. They repeat safe, healthy, and happy back to me when I'm having a meeting with them about something, because I'll say to them, you know, what's really important in this situation? And they go, Mana Jody, which is what I get called most of the time. I think it's like sister or auntie or something. Mana Jody, safe, healthy, happy, most important. So they're really like absorbing the language but believing it.
Mm.
And it has, I think, changed their confidence level in how they communicate things to us that they might have been concerned about 2 years ago, but this has kind of really given them volume in their voice. And we have a saying with them, you know, don't let the words get stuck in your throat. Even if it comes out and you think it's going to be wrong, just tell us. We'll all figure it out together.
Thanks, Jody. One last question. You have about 30 seconds, Neil, before I close out. And that is, what's next? Will the pilot continue? What could it look like? What are your thoughts?
Oh, look, we would love for the pilot to continue. We still get calls now from our participants asking about a variety of different matters. And word certainly has got out about what has been achieved. So there is absolutely an appetite for many farms to be involved in a project like this again. So it'd be great to have this continue in some capacity.
Fantastic. Just a few things to close out. Or are you going to say something else, Neil? Did I interrupt you?
No.
Thanks so much, everyone, for joining us today. Thank you to Jody and Neil. You've been fantastic. The webinar recording will be made available to all registrants in the coming week. The evaluation pop-up box will appear shortly. Please share your feedback. It's really helpful. And whether you're interested in attending future sessions, we will continue to run webinars like this on a range of topics throughout next year. If you have a topic of interest, please contact us at info@iscrr.com.au. And again, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you.
Merry Christmas, everyone.